Hi, I'm John DeVore. Welcome to the channel. And welcome to the final, definitely final installation of my conversation with the Audiophiliac, Steve Guttenberg. This is what I thought was going to be two parts, and it is two reels. The weird thing about shooting digital video is that on a lot of cameras, because of thermal management or because of write speed, whatever it is, there's a 29.9 minute limit, and then it turns off, and then you've got to start filming again. So this is the last two reels of that conversation. I thought it was going to be split up, but there wasn't any rational place to split it, so I just let it be. So it's a nice long one. In it, Steve and I talk about what he does right after he left retail in New York City at Sound by Singer, and how he ended up with his Audiophiliac YouTube channel and all the things that sort of happened in between. And it's a lot of very interesting stuff. So please enjoy the grand finale of my conversation with Steve Guttenberg, the Audiophiliac. My goodness.
You know, a lot of customers got it. They were fine. Everything was
Right.
good. But then there were many who are much worse than the example I just gave,
Right.
who just make it so difficult, you know, and that's frustrating because I basically love selling audio, but I hit a wall 15 or 16 years in where suddenly I couldn't. I just couldn't do it anymore. I did not want to
The thrill was gone.
be the guide through this journey anymore because the people just made it so difficult some of the time.
Right.
I just said, I never thought I would. I thought, I love doing this. I always do it. And then all of a sudden I couldn't do it.
Is that where your reviewing career started?
Yeah, I mean, yes, it was
Because it is
around
doing
that
the
time.
similar
It
thing,
kinda-
just without
but
direct
without the
interaction.
introduction part. Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah. So I was working for Chesky Records.
That's right. Right. That was the first. Yeah. That's
And I was working for Chesky Records, basically being, you know, it's a vague term, but an associate producer on sessions. But David and I were friends, and he had this new remastering of a classical recording, Symphony Fantastique, an old RCA
Right.
coming out, and he wanted
His
Harry
RCA reissues were the best.
Yeah,
They were
oh, man.
amazing. Better than the later RCA reissues. I mean, they were so good. I
Yeah,
loved
this is on
those.
vinyl.
Yeah.
And this is like 96 or so. And so he says, David says to me, why don't you go out to see Harry Pearson and bring him, you know, some records and schmooze with him.
Harry Pearson, editor-in-chief, founder of
Right.
The Absolute Sound.
A legend, definitely.
A legend, a
deservedly so.
true legend in hi-fi, yes.
So I go out to meet Harry. You know, we play the records. He really likes the records. And we're just hanging. It was great. It was really, really good because I had never met him before. It was a big deal for me. And then he turns to me and he said, can you write? And the true answer was, absolutely not. I have never written anything.
Random question out of the blue, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't see it coming.
Right.
But I guess he saw my passion, my enthusiasm, my experience. So he
Right.
said, can you write?
And being articulate, just
I
you know,
guess,
talking to him,
yeah.
obviously.
So he said, can you write? And I felt I should say yes, even though the answer was no. I said, yeah, I can, yeah. And
So the
Harry-
angels on your shoulder popped up, and you took the advice of the correct
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
Yeah, good.
And then Harry, being Harry, said, about what? Now, I didn't have the balls to say, I want to do reviews.
Right.
It just wasn't coming to me, right? I said, at this point, 96 or so, vinyl was definitely going down.
Right.
It was a really bad
Right.
period. So I said, I want to write a column about new vinyl that's coming out. You know, like, here's really good stuff, blah, blah, blah. And he said, oh, that's good. Yeah, you could do that. And then that column was called Vinyl Rules. And
Oh, right,
I
yes.
did that for about a year and a half, which in Absolute Sound terms, that wasn't like every month at that point. I think
Right.
it was every other month.
Right, that's true, right.
So I did this column, and as I was doing the column, which was really making lists of records, so it wasn't like writing, right? It was descriptions of records. Harry, Frank Doris, the managing editor, he calls me up one day, and he said, do you want to do an interview? And I said, yeah, I guess. Who? He said, Gavin Bryars. Now, Gavin Bryars was, and probably still is, an avant-garde composer.
Right.
And he had this record out at that moment called The Sinking of the Titanic. And this is before the movie Titanic. And it's basically, it's an orchestral, but it's a lot of sound effects. There's a lot that went into making this recording. And here's the kicker. So our friend, George Stanwyck, was working at Tower Records.
Analog George. Yep.
And I was hanging out a lot at Tower Records. And I knew that this record, The Sinking of the Titanic, was a monster for classical music, even avant-garde music. It was selling 300 CDs a week.
That's
out of
astonishing
the downtown
for,
Tower Records.
For classical release, yeah.
Huge. I mean, it just hit something, and people were talking about it. It was a really exciting thing. So that's why he asked me to do this interview. And I did the interview by phone. He's in London, I'm in Brooklyn, and we're talking. And I talked to him for 3 hours, and I really connected with him. I was intimidated by him, but I did research before I did think about the actual sinking of the Titanic. Yeah, so interviewing people like Ron Howard is really, really incredible. I mean, they don't always end well. I interviewed Mickey Hart because from the Grateful Dead,
the drummer, percussionist, yeah.
Because he was mixing some of their records in surround sound.
Oh, okay.
But he was extremely argumentative with me. He was asking me all the questions. I said, "No, I think I'm interviewing you."
Right. Yeah.
Like
it's
I wasn't.
Artists can be temperamental.
Yes,
he was.
This was not a good day.
Yeah.
But some of them are absolutely incredible. I interviewed Thelma Schoonmaker, who was Martin Scorsese's editor, and probably still is. And as they were making Kundun, that's when I did this edit. And wow, that was so good. That was intense. She was so open and giving and just telling me great stories and da-da-da-da.
So your access to all these filmmakers and...
This is for Home Theater Magazine.
I was going to say, but also, so I know, because I know you, I know that you've also been a projectionist for many, many years. So were you already at this point, you already were?
Right. I was still, in the early...
So this is...
Yeah, I stopped being a projectionist in 1999. So a lot of this stuff overlaps.
So it's overlapping.
But being a projectionist, you don't work like a 5-day week. You work in very long days, but not many of them.
Right.
So yeah, I was doing that. So
like
I was sort of in the film business of sorts. Interviewing movie stars and especially directors was really exciting.
Right.
You know, like I did a story about Men in Black, the movie, as it was being the sound mix was going on. The sound mix for a movie like that is 3 or 4 months. It's just
it's massive. I mean, you're inventing sounds for stuff that doesn't exist.
Oh my god.
Yeah, no, that's.
And the director, Barry Sonnenfeld, was such a character, man. He was totally on, you know.
Right.
And he would get really excited. Like there's a scene in Men in Black where they're chasing or they're going in the Lincoln Tunnel. Lincoln Tunnel?
Right.
Is it? Yeah.
And they go up on the roof. That's
and they're in this rocket car, and there's a lot of traffic, so they turn on the rockets and they go upside down and drive along the roof. And as this is happening, there's an Elvis Presley song, you know, Elvis Presley singing Promised Land. I'm pretty sure it's Promised Land. So they're mixing this scene, and there's 4 mixers. There's the dialogue mixer, the music mixer, the effects mixer, and the master, the guy who's basically controlling everything.
So each of these, by mixer, you mean a person?
A person.
A person who is mixing these different things. Wow, okay.
And they have, essentially, you know, unlimited tracks.
Mind-boggling amount of stuff, yeah.
It's so freaking complicated.
Right.
So anyway, so there's Barry Sonnenfeld. I'm sitting right next to him. And he tells me that he or they paid $100,000 for licensing the Promised Land song. And he tells me that the rocket sound of the car, they actually put a jet engine on a pickup truck and fired it up, I guess not at full blast, so they could basically record it like coming towards you or going away from you. Doppler effects and stuff.
Oh my
as
God.
Opposed to just faking the sound.
Right.
They actually did all this work. Right?
Wow.
So they're mixing the scene. And he's like there on a lower level, the 4 mixers, and then we're at this next level up, and I'm sitting next to him. And he says, I paid a lot of money for Promised Land. Turn it up. I want more Promised Land. I go, okay, Barry, here you go. Here's more Promised Land. He says, you know, that jet engine was a real pain in the ass to record. I want more of that engine sound, you know. And I go, okay, Barry, here's more. I can't hear the dialogue. He says, well, okay, we'll give you more dialogue. And he stands up and he says, "I'm an only child. I'm used to getting what I wanted. Give me more."
That's amazing.
It was funny.
That's like a perfect director situation.
Right. Yeah. And one of the guys turns around and says to him, "Barry, everything is up all the way.
Right.
There ain't no more to give you. We can take things down so you can hear other parts easier or something, but there's nothing more to give." But one of the things that was funny is that he liked to listen to the playback really loud. So the dialogue mixer was a really famous guy, Lee Dichter, who was like the dialogue mixer in New York City. Barry leans over and looks at Lee Dichter and says, "Hey Lee, are you wearing earplugs when you're mixing my movie?" And he said, "No, only when you're here." That was fun.
What is that called? A cinephone? What, like when you have a name that goes perfectly with your job, right?
Oh.
Dichter, the guy who mixes the...
Lee Dichter, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I got there in the early stage. The first stage of mixing the movie, at least for that movie, was dialogue. So Lee is mixing the dialogue. So it's just dialogue. There's nothing else happening.
Right.
And I said to him, "So Lee, how long is it going to take you to mix this dialogue track for the movie?" And he said, "About a month." And I said, "Really? I don't understand." I said, "It's just one person talking, then another person talking. There's some crowd sound. Why is that? Why does that take so much time?" And he says, "Because all the sounds in the movie are recorded in different locations, and some of it is done in a studio, and some of it's done outside,
Right.
and it all sounds really different. And it has to, as much as possible, sound exactly the same that Will Smith and what's his name, the other guy,
Tommy Lee Jones.
They have the timbre of their voice has to be the same throughout the entire movie, no matter what's going on."
Right.
And he
Right,
said,
so there's a massive amount of EQing and effects going on before any mixing happens, just to get things consistent.
And compression, because he said, like Tommy Lee Jones, he said when he does his lines, he starts off loud and he gets quieter and quieter and quieter as he continues.
Right.
And so I'm bringing up his level, but when I'm bringing up his level, there's always going to be some noise.
Everything
and the
else,
noise is getting louder too, so I have to deal with the noise.
Right. So that's like
why
one
it
of
takes
the
4 weeks to mix dialogue for a movie. This is a big $100 million Hollywood movie. If it's a cheap movie, it's not going to take 4 weeks to make. I did many movie articles about mixing movies because I liked it. And I used to say, you guys almost never talk about the surround mix of the movie. You're talking about the dialogue, you're talking about the effects. Is the effects working? Do we need a different effect? Is the music cue happening? Is it not happening?
Right.
But you never talk about spatial. And they said, yeah, it's interesting. And the I think the lead mixer guy says, well, Steve, the idea is to keep the audience's attention on the screen. So if they're like, what's going on over there? It's not good. You're taking them out of the story.
Right.
So my job is to make them stay, looking at the screen and involved in the story. Not like
that's funny because that's literally the opposite of what a customer walking into a high-end audio shop wants when they want a home theater. Is they always want
more.
Oh my God, this stuff is happening. You sit there and you listen to a really beautifully mixed movie.
Right.
You shouldn't really be even aware of surround information other than, okay, a helicopter just flew over, right? But you don't want like somebody to be talking from over there, and but of course that's what they want because they're spending big bucks to get a 5.1.
And it eventually got to, that TV show Lost?
Yeah. Right.
So I did a story about mixing Lost because a friend of mine was one of the mixers, and it was actually done all in. They were shooting in Hawaii, but all the mixing and all the other production was in LA. And he said to me that, because this was later, now when I'm talking about Men in Black, that's a long time, really long time.
That's 90s, yeah.
This, Lost is much more recent. That when there were scenes with rain, or, rain sounds, that sometimes he was tailoring the sound essentially on each raindrop, that in terms of how loud they were, where they landed and everything, it was that minute, the detail of the mix of a freaking TV show. And he said that show was so close to finishing mixing and production before it would air, sometimes as close as just 2 or 3 days.
Right.
And the pressures that those guys are under to do it, it's just incredible. I mean, it's really super detail-oriented work.
Right.
And
people don't
everybody's
think about that. That's why those
critique-
articles were so interesting, is because people
Yeah.
never think about sound mix on movies. I mean, people think probably about sound mix on audio recordings to some
Right,
extent,
right.
but definitely not in
Movies
movies. And in movies,
is
it's
so-
like infinitely more complex.
Oh my lord, yeah. And then there was a Ron Howard movie where, this isn't what I wrote about, but he didn't like the score. The score had been written, recorded, and they started editing it, and then when Ron Howard heard the score, he didn't like it.
Oh,
So he fires the composer, hires a new composer who has to then write it,
right.
record it, and then bring it to us, the crew, to
Right.
mix it into the movie.
Right.
And this movie had like a hard, release date. It was like a Christmas movie or something.
Right.
So they had to work these insane
Wow.
days to get it done. So up to the point that they were getting the new score, they were just working around, because the score is not through the entire movie. So
Right,
they
right.
did the rest of the movie and got it done in just these big chunks where the score was going to appear and how to just slide it in there. And anyway, we're off too
So
far
when did
off
you
audio.
when did you start reviewing? As I think I put in the description of part one, for me at least, you were the first video hi-fi reviewer, or even video hi-fi columnist that I was aware of. Certainly like a very early guy on YouTube in the hi-fi world. So how did you get into that spot?
Right,
What
because
got
I
you
never
there?
reviewed anything for Stereophile or the Absolute
Right.
Sound.
Right. So these are
Or audio
columns
magazine,
and think
right.
pieces, right?
So what started me reviewing was I started to write for a website called eTown. And eTown was like what CNET became, but before CNET existed, there was eTown.
That's right.
And the thing about that's like 1999. It was the .com boom.
Right.
So there was a gigantic amount of money that was going into eTown to build this company.
Right.
And I wasn't there in the first year or so. I got it in the second year because somebody approached me and said, "Hey, do you want to do reviews for us?" I said, "Yeah." So I wrote one review, and I wrote another review, and then they said, "We want you to just focus on this." And there it was, trial by fire, because it was not like a magazine that has a limited number of pages. They wanted
Oh,
me to
right.
just like.
They needed content.
Yeah,
Right.
so, and unlimited. Steve, you want to write 10 reviews a month? Write 10. Want to write 15? Write
Wow,
15.
yeah.
It doesn't matter. It's as fast as you can get it and scribble it out and just get it to us. That's what I did. So I learned how to write audio reviews by writing for eTown and just like churning out massive amount of
Right.
content. So that really brought me up to speed. And it was funny that as I was writing for eTown, Amazon at that point was also doing paid reviews. And somebody at Amazon approached me and said, "Hey, we like what you're doing for eTown. Would you consider moving over to Amazon?" I said, "Maybe." So, the next day I go to see the big boss at eTown and said, "Hey,
I know
I
where
got
this is
this
going."
offer
Right.
from Amazon." There's Amazon.
Right.
And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, I'd rather stay here with you. Can you match what they're going to pay me? Because they're going to pay me double what you pay me." And he's like, "I'll get back to you in an hour." And he did, and he gave me double what
Right.
I got paid.
Right.
And then I had an exclusive contract. Oh, when he paid me double, that's all I could do.
Right. He's like, behave yourself. Yeah.
Yeah,
Now
he
you're
said,
mine.
"No, we own everything you write."
Right.
And then eTown crashed and burned because it was a company that never made any money. It just, investment money went in, but they
Right.
never made a profit. They never figured
Which
out.
never happened before in the .com. That's so unusual. What a surprise that that's the case.
It was the day the crap hit the fan was really intense.
Oh man.
So people practically rioted, that they were out of a job. So I go home, I pick up the phone, and I called Home Theater Magazine. That's when I started writing for Home Theater Magazine. I called Maureen Jensen, the editor. I said, "Hey, I just lost my gig at eTown. Can I write for you?" And she said, "Yes." So I started writing for her. And so my audio reviewing part starts with eTown.
Right.
And CNET, right around the time that eTown crashes and burns, CNET was already happening, but it was in its very early stages. So I knew some people who were previously at eTown that moved to CNET. So
Right. And
I got into
CNET
CNET.
became pretty dominant for quite a while.
CNET, I think it is still pretty big, but
Yeah.
CNET has gone through a lot of changes. But
Yeah.
in those early years at CNET, it was just like this It
Right.
was E-Town, but it was E-Town that was a real business.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So it was great, and I had incredible freedom. I could do anything I wanted. So I was having so much fun in E-Town, and everything was
And that's
wonderful.
when I remember. So
And it
that was the
wasn't
first stuff
exclusive
that I
to
remember of yours is
Yeah.
the stuff that you were writing for CNET, and that was also when I realized the sheer amount of content that you were generating was far surpassed anyone else who was writing. And it wasn't all it wasn't all high end audio.
Right,
It was
it
a
was
lot of it
everything.
was like real entry level or like video players and stuff like that. It was sort of general
Yeah,
consumer
it
electronics.
was wide open.
Yeah,
So that
yeah,
was
sound bars and stuff. But
Oh,
it was
lots of sound
astonishing how much content you were generating, and that's the most significant thing that I remembered about when you started your YouTube channel was how much sheer content you put out in that. It's got to be at least the first year. You were just like,
Oh,
it was
one a day.
unbelievable. Yeah, one a day. You were one video a day, which is
7 days a week.
amazing.
Yeah, but the part that you jumped ahead is, which is really important to the story, is that the Audiophiliac thing started as a blog on CNET. So the
That's
blog
right. I didn't
was
even realize that.
about
That's right.
11 years old when I started the YouTube channel. So
Right.
the Audiophiliac predates the channel by a long time.
But those were think pieces where you have a question or you're
reviews
talking
and-
about something.
Yeah,
and,
I just make stuff up.
yeah.
But a lot of reviews, but a lot of just ideas or how to do this or how to do
Right.
So I was doing, when I started the column, the blog,
Right.
I was doing 5 of them a week. So it was this thing of just like crank out
Right.
all this stuff.
Right.
And so the YouTube thing sort of morphed out of that.
Right.
Because I already had this rolling start of doing.
It's incredible
Audiophiliac
training.
stuff.
I mean, it really
Yeah.
is amazing.
It's
Yeah.
just like, just
Right.
crank. But it's a very different thing. Because when I wrote for CNET, I was part of a team. I work with
Right.
a lot of people.
Right.
And when I moved to YouTube, there's no people.
It's you.
It's just me. I
Right.
don't know a single person at
Right.
YouTube or Google or anything.
Right.
There's no contact, which
Right.
still really feels really strange.
Right.
I know,
Right.
not-
It's like
not
whatever. It's like the community that exists for the Audiophiliac on YouTube was 100% made by you.
Right.
It's like every step of the way
Right.
has been you, which
And
is
it's all me.
amazing.
It's not an
Yeah.
ego thing. It's just the way
No,
it
it's
looks.
amazing.
just-
Yeah, no, it's a dark little office that you put it up, and then all of a sudden it's out there in the public, and people are talking.
But
And
what's
there's like-
amazing about it is that it's out there
Right.
and it's worldwide.
Right.
That's the part that is still so exciting to me.
Right.
Right now,
Totally worldwide.
more people watch me not in the United States though. I mean, it changes
Right.
all the time, but basically, it's over. It's like 55% are outside the
Right.
US.
I was just in Munich at the HiFi show there, and of the people who wanted to talk to me, 90% of them said, "I know you from YouTube,"
See?
right, in Munich. And so, almost none of them were from the U.S. They were, from wherever they were, Europe or
Yeah, I
Mostly
mean,
Europe.
the connection between me and the viewer is so much stronger than me as a writer.
yes,
I mean, it's not even close.
it's not even close.
Because they feel, I am famous, I'm a celebrity,
Right.
but they feel like they know me,
Right.
that they would never get from me writing. That also means that I'm not the best writer, right? I'm not the strongest writer out there. I might win.
I
on
disagree, though.
quantity.
Even the
It's
best
quality,
writer-
I'm not so sure about.
But I think even the best writer, like obviously the best audio writers, someone like Art Dudley or someone, people really felt like they knew
Absolutely.
who Art Dudley was.
Yes.
But it's still not the same as a video. A video where you're talking to your viewers
Right.
feels really sort of genuinely feels like a conversation
Right.
between the viewer and the presenter, you,
Right.
and I try to bring that exact same feeling to my channel.
Yes, yeah.
I want to feel like, and I want to present like I am having a conversation with people who are watching.
Right.
And then,
There's no filter between what you
Exactly.
say and what they hear. In
right, no, yeah,
That's it.
exactly. And then they respond in the comments. They respond by watching more videos or by swearing at me and telling me that they're going to cancel their subscription, whatever it is. But it's like there's an interaction there that's very different from writing a piece and having someone, read it and talk to their friend about it, and then there's never any feedback necessarily.
Yeah.
It's very
No,
different.
It's really powerful. Yeah. It's funny. At one of the shows, I'm down there. I'm talking to people in the hall. This big, very large black woman is 20 feet away from me, and she screams, "You're the audiophiliac!" She runs over to me. She's a lot bigger than me, and she puts her arms around me and she picks me up.
I love that.
That's intense. It was so great. Oh, I had the best time.
You have huge fans. What's your subscribers are over 200,000 now.
216. That's it.
Mind-boggling. Yeah, you have a huge fan base.
Yeah. So that's it feels so intimate,
Right.
and I really really like that. Now, the thing is, what I've been saying for most of my life, and I'm still saying it is, what am I going to be when I grow up?
Right.
I want there to be another thing after this.
Huh.
So I do spend some time. I don't have it, but I want something after my Audiophiliac. Now it might also be on YouTube because I just like being on YouTube. So it might be another video thing, but. I don't know.
Cool. That's
I know what it is, but I want a final act, and this isn't the final act. It's going to be one more idea.
Stay tuned.
Because before I did this, before I made a video, I always wondered when people bought cameras or phones that video was a thing. Like, why? What do you do with video?
Right.
I never made a video.
Right. Well,
I started this
like in my formative years, video was crappy. Like even like when I was in art school in the early '80s. Video was still pretty crappy, or if it was good, it was giant. You had a giant belt of batteries,
right.
And you had this thing like this, and the cartridges lasted only so long. And even then, the end result was way below what you could get with film, and it's not that anymore. Now it's, analog guys are going to kill me, but video has vastly surpassed.
Right.
In its abilities, has vastly surpassed film in every way. I mean, it's kind of amazing what you can do, with a stupid little phone in your pocket.
Yeah.
Just hold it up and you've got, high definition.
It is that is amazing too. It's still amazing. I still can't get over how effective it is, and the communication is so good. So I really like that. But it is a thing that I think about, is not just my next gig, but also what to do with my channel.
Right.
I want to do things other than reviews. I want to do fewer reviews and more other things.
Right.
And but people want reviews, so it's this balancing act that I have to do.
So if you look at the views, what videos get the most views on your channel? Is it reviews, or is it think pieces, or
no? The highest ones, and these are the ones that are hard to continuously crank out, is my top 10 favorite bookshelf speakers or something.
Right, the lists, right.
The list. That's the one.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking about doing another one soon, but those do really well.
Right.
I did one that has over 1 million views. Of I put together ideas for systems for around $1,200. That hit 1 million recently.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
I mean, there are millions of people out there who would love to know how to put together a system for around $1,000, $1,200.
Yeah,
because that's hard, and you feel intimidated walking into a hi-fi store with that as your budget, or maybe you think that budget is totally legit, and you walk in and all of a sudden these guys are looking at you like I don't have time for a $1,200 system, right? I mean,
it's like whatever.
It's like the stereotype, I guess, but
yeah. So it's a drag because a lot of times in the comments people say things like, "Oh, I'm not going to buy it based on a review. I got to hear it." And I think, good. I hope you can.
Yes.
But that's not usually possible anymore in 2022 to hear it before
too
I
many
hear
brands,
it in the store.
Whatever.
It's just I get the desire. I just don't know how it gets done. I mean, I am so frustrated that I liked it the old way. Stores, even relatively small towns and cities had an audio store, right?
Yeah.
But most people pre-internet days actually heard the stuff before they bought it.
Right.
And now it's, I'm sure 90+% of the people that buy any kind of decent audio never get to hear it.
I wonder if that's true. You think 90%?
Yeah.
I don't think that's been my experience.
75%, really?
Well, I mean, I'm a speaker maker, so maybe it's different.
And you're here in New York City, but
Right, but no, my experience with just in the interactions that I have with DeVore Fidelity customers, very few of them bought without hearing.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. It could be because my price point is higher than the average, and because I think speakers. For
really
example,
online, right?
That's true. They're not sold online. But I mean, any of my dealers would take an order over the phone or by email to a customer who just says, I would like to buy.
So you don't think they have? They've this.
I'm sure some of them. I'm sure they have some, but maybe only to customers who have already developed a real trust.
Okay, right.
I honestly, in my sampling of customers who I've interacted with, none of them have
That
bought
would be interesting.
without
It'd be interesting if, that's true.
But that's probably very different for stuff that's in a lower price point.
Oh yeah, lower the
whatever,
price.
less to lose, lower risk, whatever it is.
And more likely to be sold online. I mean,
Yeah.
KEF has KEF Direct, right?
Right.
Which is weird for their dealers.
Right. I mean, a lot of companies, Macintosh is sold on Amazon. At least, I don't know if it is still, but it was for a long time.
Yeah, so.
I mean, boy, did that piss off brick and mortar stores.
Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah.
But, it's a great time in audio. A lot of really affordable stuff that's exceptional. A lot of not so, it's all gotten better. So.
I agree. The affordable stuff has gotten better. The crazy stratospheric stuff has, I would say, gotten more consistent at least and better.
Yeah.
It's gotten more stratospheric for sure. And I'm not talking about, I mean, I do have some speakers that are stratospheric, but I think even my stratospheric is far from the most expensive systems. It's amazing how high up they go now.
Yeah.
But if there's a market for it, why shouldn't there be product for it?
Yeah,
It makes sense.
That's the thing that really frustrates me, and I'm thinking about doing a video about comments,
Yeah.
about things.
Like I did after my first year. It's one of my highest viewed ones, but I basically, and for some reason I got more aggressively negative comments in my first year than I ever got after that. And I don't know if it was a YouTube algorithm that started filtering them or what. But what I did is I printed out all of my favorite crazy talk, all my favorite crazy comments, and personal attacks and all that stuff. And I put the camera on my production manager, Dahlia, and I handed them to her, and she read them on air.
Oh, great!
She didn't read them beforehand, so I would hand her these comments, some of which are just bilious, vile, crazy shit. And she would just be reading them. And first of all, it was an opportunity for her to say that shit to her boss, which I'm sure was great. But also, I mean, you see her like cracking up on it. It was a great, And then I would sort of deadpan respond to them.
Oh,
it was
I'll
a great
watch
one.
that one.
It's a good one. Yeah.
Well, I have a thing about negative comments. So when I started the blog on CNET, one of my higher ups said to me, "Don't respond to comments."
You mean at all?
Any, right? Just don't do it. Okay. So I'm sure for at least the first 6 months I didn't respond at all. Certainly easier not to respond, right?
Yeah.
But there was this one guy who on almost every blog said Steve Guttenberg is an idiot, CNET should fire Steve Guttenberg, why is he there? Just negative, right? So, and this went on for 6 months.
Right.
And one day I said, so I responded to him. And here's what I said to him. I said, John, I want to thank you for being an incredibly constant reader. I said, John, I want to thank you for being an incredibly
my most devoted reader. Exactly.
And better than that, even though you disagree with everything I've ever written, you come back for more.
Okay, sudden, unexpected ending. As I believe I mentioned in the intro, when you're shooting video, a lot of cameras have a cutoff at 29 point whatever minutes, and we unfortunately cut off the end of Steve's great story. But I do remember it, believe it or not. I have a crappy memory, but I do remember this story because it was great. So Steve replies back to the guy who'd been trolling him for 6 months on his blog on CNET with kindness, essentially. Thank you for reading all of my blogs. Clearly you've been reading them because you've been commenting on all of them. And the commenter replied back with kindness. He was just so happy to have received a reply from Steve and became a really sort of devoted follower and positive commenter after that. So there is a moral to that story, and I suppose one of the morals is that not everyone who appears to be a horrible troll is necessarily a horrible troll. Maybe some of them are just reaching out They're lonely. They wanted a friend. And anyway, that seems to be a nice place to end this epic conversation. I want to send huge thanks out again to Steve for indulging me in and my channel in what ended up being quite a few trips back and forth with the camera and everything like that. And I want to thank all of you. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you at the next one. Thanks very much.